All right, thanks. Welcome everybody to Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. Meeting in the Capital Region Transportation Council. I'll start with introductions. Steve Feeney, Schenectady County.
Chris Wallen, City of Schenectady.
Greg Wexler, Region 1 DOT.
Bill Trudeau, City of Albany.
Dave Monteverdi, Albany County Airport Authority.
Lisa Raimondo, Albany County DPW.
Mike Bodett, Thruway Authority.
Andrew Kreshik, City of Troy.
Kim Lambert, Saratoga County.
Tom Houlihan, City of Rensselaer.
Peter Knudsen, Schenectady County.
Mark Castiglione, Regional Planning Commission.
And Sandy Misowitz with the Transportation Council.
What's the Shannon, CTA?
Chris Cornwell, GPI.
Dylan Green, GPI.
Andrew Tracy, Transportation Council.
Ethan Townsend, Transportation Council. Adam Marple, Transportation Council.
Thanks, that's from New York State DOT. Jesse Vogel, Bell Associates.
Jim DeJoy, a member of the public.
And online, we have Leah Rai from the Transportation Council. Could the person that has the number 7993 identify themselves in the chat with your affiliation?
Jeff Gensler, CHA. I'm getting that updated.
Dan Lara from the Transportation Council, Ed Snyder from GPI, Emily Laughlin from CDTA, Jamie O'Neill from the town of Malta, Jeff Pangburn from Creighton Manning, Joe Cimino from CHA, John Scabo from the town of Clinton Park, John Schneiderwin from the Port of Albany, Waved Ying, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing that poorly, CHA, Laura Robinson from the town of Niskayuna, Mayor Rubino from the village of Colony, Mike Williams from CDTA, Parker Morris from the Transportation Council, Rosa Torino from Albany County, Sharon Butler from the city of Cohoes, Suzanne Lilliard from Albany County, and Tim Lane from the village of Manans. If I've missed anybody, please put your name and affiliation in the chat, but I think we captured all the virtual attendees.
Big crowd today.
Big crowd tonight.
We have
And Mike has just entered the room from Saratoga Springs.
icy Saratoga maybe. Did we have any issues? Anybody?
No one registered.
Okay, we're gonna go right into our presentation, I presume here. Are we reimagining I-890? Are you gonna?
Yeah, so just a quick intro as a reminder, when we did the emotion plan, we identified this project area as one of our priorities. It's an illustrative project at this point, so it doesn't have a funding commitment for construction, but the Pell study was underway. And we know that this is an important project to the county and also to the city. So we're at the point, I believe the public review period is about to come to an end next week. But I thought it was a good time for a briefing on the results of the study. So I'll turn it over to Peter or the team from GPI.
Thanks, Andy. Just stand up here. Everyone hear me okay, right? Sandy's gonna be my clicker here for that. You wanna go to the next slide here? So, I thought I'd start off first, and sort of an overview. I think everyone's pretty familiar with what a Pell study is now. There's quite a few going on within the state. I mean, locally, there's Manan's Pell study, there's 787, and we have the one at 4C. The interesting thing about the 4C one, just to go, it's the only one that I'm aware of in New York State that's being led by a local sponsor, being Schenectady County, as one of the only few in the country that's being led by a county. So it's pretty innovative and unique in that way. That's going to be the county's taking the lead on that. So what is a Pell? So Pell stands for Planning and Environmental Linkage Study. Basically, it's a collaborative decision-making approach. It's a little different than the standard engineering approach that where a lot of us are used to, that considers the environment, the community, and the goals early on in the transportation process. It takes that and it uses that to basically develop and inform the environmental review process. So the idea of this is to help reduce duplication and to keep everyone informed throughout the process. So FHWA started the Pell process back in 2006. So it's about a 20-year process that we've been doing that. But there's a lot more Pell studies that are ongoing throughout the country and New York State. So some of the benefits, I went over some of these already. It's supposed to streamline NEPA as we go through this, shorten that NEPA review timeline. We have been working throughout the whole process. We had monthly calls, at least monthly calls with FHWA and our team members at DOT. So we've been working through that entire process through the project. It's supposed to identify our stakeholders, so we've had a lot of stakeholder meetings throughout the process. Many of you in this room have been part of that, but also through the community outreach, that we did. Develop relationships, engage in non-transportation agencies in that decision making, and ultimately improve the overall process for EPA. Typical design process is, we get a project, we develop some concepts, and we present to the public. This is a little bit different. It was actually very interesting, the first open house we had. We went back to the public and we really just had a blank slate. And we said to the public, what do you want to see out there? And it was actually a pretty interesting process, right, people? We were going through that, to have them sort of give us some feedback. And then we took that feedback as engineers, analyzed that as to what is actually feasible, and then presented those concepts back to the community. So totally sort of flipped the process of what we're used to doing. So overall, these are sort of the bullet points of the process. We began, again, collecting some of the existing data of the corridor, a lot of traffic studies we did, accident studies out there. Got public involved early on, in the process, developed some concepts, as I talked about. We'll go through some of those concepts as we're going. We also did an in-depth look at all the social, environmental, and economic impacts. And then, as Sandy had mentioned, we published the draft final Pell report that was published actually about a month ago. It is out for public comment right now. And we're basically looking to transition that. There we go.
Sorry.
Into the future NEPA review process. So we are right here in the process, right towards the very technical piece. Here's the study area. If you're not familiar with the area, just point on here. Sorry for the folks online. But 4C is right here. There's a lot of zone congestion issues here at this off ramp here. There's a lot of movements into Scotia. This entire area was built primarily back in the 1960s for General Electric. You can see over here, and the whole modes of transportation have really changed in this area. There's a lot of rich new development going on here. The county has a proposed aquatic center. There's a lot of development in the city downtown core here that is ongoing. So really, we looked at this to say, how can we better fit, what's out there now with the proposed condition of what we want to see, and realizing too, in discussions with DOT, that a lot of this infrastructure for 890 is at sort of the end of its useful life. So how can we revision this and develop something that can sort of reduce some of the infrastructure we have out there? Next slide. I'd like to show this one because it's pretty interesting. Everybody's like, well, 890 always looked like it did now. It's like, well, actually, no, in 8 years, it did look that way. It wasn't actually there. This is the same slide. So all this was built in a period of 8 years. So what we see out there now wasn't always there, and it may not always be there. So it's interesting to see that change of what has happened within some of our lifespans. It's pretty interesting showing that slide. Next slide. We worked extensively on the PAL to really define the purpose and need. Dylan's one of my team members, so we spent a lot of time developing that, working with FHWA to really ensure that the concepts we developed fact check these against what we're trying to actually achieve out there. So I just want to highlight some of the objectives that we're trying to meet out there. So the first goal is ensuring our highways, roadways, and interchange ramps in the area are right size. As I mentioned, a lot of this was developed for GE. They had 40,000 people working there at the height of their facility. Now they're down to like 2,500. So trying to right size the infrastructure that's out there. While we're doing that, we're looking at the roadway and highway inefficiencies and the complexities that are out there. There's a lot of inefficiencies with what's out there today. And then third bullet here is really looking at that safety, connectivity, and accessibility for all users, pedestrians, the bicyclists, the transit users, and how that all ties together with the vehicles out there. And then, as I mentioned, addressing some of these structural deficiencies, looking at with DOT 890 and some of their aging infrastructure that is out there along the interstate. Next slide. Maybe.
There it goes.
There we go. One of the things we looked at, Stephanie, who was our planner on the project, she was unable to make it here this morning, but she did a comprehensive review, like any planning study, looking back over a period of 20 years at all the studies, and there were a lot of them that were done in the project area. So this was just a snapshot of that, all the studies that we looked at. Tried to build of what we have looked at in the past to where we're going today. Next slide. Dylan and our traffic group did an extensive review of the traffic, that is out there. We used a combination of DOT traffic, we did counts, we used replica planning tool data. We also, worked closely with the CRTC team, with their step model, looking at the 2050, plan for traffic out there. This here, we did a lot of some heat map development too, looking at some of the accidents. You can sort of see where the clusters of accidents are. If you've driven through there, there's a lot of potential for accident. So again, a lot of that will help sort of develop the concepts that we're gonna see here in a bit that we ended up developing. Next slide. Environmental resources, that was key that we looked at. So all these concepts we pushed through, what impacts we may have. We have a lot of resources out there. We have the Mohawk River. We have a lot of wetlands and water resources. The good or the interesting thing was a lot of this area, as you saw back in the historical slide, was previously disturbed. So that's a good benefit to this area because a lot of what we're working within had been disturbed during the construction of the original interstate and other infrastructure in the area. But throughout the whole process, we did a full comprehensive environmental review for all the concepts that are presented. Next slide.
Sorry. It's a little testy today.
On the public involvement, as I mentioned, it was pretty intensive starting right off at the beginning, you know. We sat with the community, we had a lot of blank images to start off with, took feedback from the community, on the Post-it notes, a lot of listening sessions, pop-up events. And then sort of presented those up here and left to the community and really took that input and what they really wanted to see out there. So it was a great process going through that, working with the community. We got a lot of support, we got a lot of positive comments through the entire process. So that was very, very beneficial going through that. We did postcard mailings, Facebook, a lot of social media posts. I think what else we did paint, that was sort of unique. We did the pop-up events there and the block parties in Schenectady. That was interesting when we did that. So a lot of outreach with the community as we went through. Next slide. So overall, and these are all in the Pell report, and I'll have a link at this at the end. There's sort of 5 concepts that we had sort of progressed through to actually formally develop to it. So all of them have some similarities as we look through here. So, and I'll just sort of highlight on some of these briefly here. So this is exit 4C here. All of these basically remove where exit 4C is and push it further to the west. This opens up a great opportunity here, where Washington Avenue currently is for either a green space area or an extension of Fuller Street to connect to the Armory and the Aquatic Center. You know, SUNY Schenectady was a key partner in this, looking at what they wanted to do with their campus and the connection to some of the housing and other amenities within the city. So this was a key area we were focused on. So that's sort of similar in all the concepts. In addition, some other standalone things, you know, looking at the Empire State Trail and the pedestrian connections which go through this project and how we could better accommodate that. And as the Binney Kill Bridge had come up as a connection from that over to the stockade. So that's sort of a standalone project that is similar to all the concepts. But concept 1 basically takes where 4C is here and it pushes about 1,000 feet to the west. Creates a new hybrid roundabout here. And again, these could either be roundabouts or traditional intersections, depending on sort of the future feedback here. But the real benefit here is, you know, again, we're freeing up this area here and pushing that connection further to the west and eliminating some of the confusion 890. This concept, and we'll see this later on, was dismissed because of some other concerns with some of the leaves that still will persist along the road. So this one is not recommended to move further than it was for the national issue. Concept 2. We flip to concept 2. Here's concept 2. Again, a similar approach here. We shifted this even further to the west here. This is it still had the loop road here, but it had flyover to connect to the eastbound 890 here. There's some benefits to this. However, it does add, going back to our original purpose and objectives, it does add a lot of additional infrastructure, being additional flyover bridges, which aren't really characteristic of the area. Adds additional infrastructure for DOT, so for those various reasons, this one has been dismissed also at our pass-fail test moving forward. Concept 3. Again, a similar loop, but instead of a flyover, we tried to use some existing infrastructure and use underpass in 890, and come up with a loop for the connection here. This did add additional, connection, length of roads, plus there's a lot of environmental concerns as we move further this way. Additionally, we've coordinated with GE, they're a major stakeholder in the area. They have a lot of concerns for oversized vehicles. So for that reason, this concept has also been, dismissed for moving forward. Moving to concept 4. So here's concept 4 overall. This basically creates, again, it pushes everything this way away from SUNY Schenectady, to the west here, creates an intersection here at the loop road. This gets rid of a lot of the concerns with some of the weaving, that would be concerned out there. Gets rid of, we have to construct one new bridge here, but we're taking out quite a few bridges for 4C. And repurposing the existing bridge, that is currently there for 890. So this one, as we ran it through the pass-fail test, passes all of our objectives we wanted to see out there. So this one is still under consideration, moving forward. It also allows for a nice connection, I guess it's not showing it here, into SUNY Schenectady, which we'll see on the next slide for concept 5. And here is concept 5 overall. Because again, basically this one pushes down Erie Boulevard even further, creates a better gateway for the city. It really opens up to pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, which is currently restricted here. It gets rid of all these loop roads. This would all become green space, and this would allow for a future connection into SUNY Schenectady, and also gives them more real estate for development. So it's a really high level overview of the concepts. And again, these are all available online for review. So the next slide. So we took all these concepts, as I mentioned, they all went through sort of a pass-fail matrix based upon those purpose and needs and objectives here. So you can sort of see these first ones failed. So these basically concepts 4 and 5 are the ones that we're looking to move forward with. And where are we at today? So as we sort of draft final report was completed in the fall. We had DOT FHWA review it along with several other stakeholders. It is out for public comment right now through January. We're going to receive any comments, and we have gotten quite a few, both positive and negative. A lot of them have been really positive for the project. We're going to incorporate those into the final report. That will get submitted to FHWA. The report will be adopted. And then, as Sandy had mentioned, we are actively pursuing funding. I didn't go over cost numbers, but as you can imagine, a lot of these concepts do have a pretty hefty price tag to them. So one of the grants we are looking at is an FHWA build grant, which is due in February. So that's something we are talking with the DOT about, doing a joint submission potentially for that. So but that will be the next step, is finding funding for this. So that was a high level overview. This is the link. You just Google Schenectady 4C Pell. You can find the report, but it's on the Schenectady County's webpage if anybody wants to see it. So any questions, comments?
Questions for Chris, Bob?
You mentioned the heavy load vehicles. We had been discussing that on another project. Was there any consideration, or it might not have been in the study area, of doing something that would connect the GE plant to the river?
So it had come up when we met with GE. Because of our study limit, it's a good point. We sort of were restricted. And as we got going through the process, there was this intention. We tried to keep our limit. It kept getting expansive for like scope creep on the project. But there, GE has that need to connect their large vehicles. I think they go up to lot 8 currently. So there will have to be further discussion on making sure that they are fully accommodated in this process. But yeah, it is a consideration for some of the massive oversized loads they do move.
And one thing is GE sort of backing away from their desire because their plans are for stuff that won't even fit in the canal. So they need the over the road route to the Port of Albany. The canal won't work for their long-term plans, as I understand it.
Well, technology always evolves and changes, you know?
Oh, indeed.
And in my mind's eye, I can see a lot of topography around that area. So would the plan be to level all that stuff? And would the DOT alienate the land in the right of way?
I'm sure if some of those concepts that move the footprint in towards the interstate, that we'd surplus out the land we no longer need. If it- Details we work out later, but yeah, we would definitely look to surplus out the land we don't want.
Yeah, all of these concepts do maintain the integrity of 890 as an interstate. That was something that came up early on, is some type of like designation of 890 in this area. But we basically decided that was well beyond the scope of this study early on, but it is a warranted a further discussion.
Yeah, with the discussions with the state, when we were looking at some of the concepts, there's also always talk of who's gonna maintain what. And so depending on which concept is finalized and the lines are drawn is when certain things may be deobligated from the state's interest and put into either into the county or the city or the town of Rotterdam, depending on who is the maintenance jurisdiction.
Yeah, I do. To Greg, but I'll talk like I'm talking to you for the group. But I brought it up at one of our previous meetings. This project seems to be in an area between illustrative and non-illustrative, kind of in this dream phase. How does the DOT view that? Is that, it's not 787. It's not, $1 billion, and it's not the bridge at that, it's not, Livingston Avenue or anything like that, but it is a big project. Does it have is there a place for a project like this? Is the build and rise something that is applicable, or is it something that needs to be picked away at? And could it be picked away at, or what's that?
In pieces, it,
I don't know. I just didn't know how in this room or in how this grant it fits, because sometimes you find that there is money for very large illustrative and there is money for a roundabout, but then you get into this middle ground and it's a little lost. I didn't know what you were thinking.
I mean, without further looks at the state, statewide funded stuff, that the build is the quickest way forward right now, if we can get a successful build application, but,
The build is through FHWA?
yeah, that's a direct federal grant. Anything else, as this evolves, we'll always have conversations about finding other funds, but, it's not an instant slam dunk, but,
What's a build limit? What is that grant?
oh, it's pretty big.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's 500 million was what the.
The high limit.
Oh, I thought it was 25 now. I thought they completely changed the rules, but we'll double check that.
Oh, I thought there's a minimum.
Yeah,
I think the minimum in an urban area is 5 and the max is 25, but I'll double check.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've changed.
There are
They
new rules.
they have new rules for the build program, so it's not as enticing as it once was.
So they're trying to spread it out instead of.
A way of
less.
thinking
It's a
about it,
build less
yeah.
program.
right.
Build less.
They're trying to make it less.
Yeah.
Is there a cost estimate? that
Yes,
you
we
put up?
ran preliminary numbers, Steve, so I'll just say from the low end of the concepts around, what you saw up there was around 20 million to the high end. Up to 150 million, that's sort of your spread. Yeah,
Options 4 and 5 were.
double higher end, obviously, that's right. So they sort of went in that order and went through cost wise.
We're all considering 4 and 5 at this point.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, so all the concept that we're looking at for full build out, we're looking at, for budgetary numbers, we're looking at like $100 million project.
But there's also discussions about doing even just a design only, just to look at. Can this, like Chris was saying, can this be parted out as to, okay, maybe we can build these exit ramps as standalone projects and then do another phase and almost do a phased construction, phased grant project of, maybe we have to just redesign this one overpass bridge that has already passed its useful life. And when they do that, they have to expand it another 10, 15 feet so that in the future we can then do roundabout projects or exit intersection projects, stuff like that.
When would the viability of a phased approach be looked at?
So I mean, the concept we have now and the fellow would give, that overall planning level onto it, but the next step would be, as Pete mentioned, to look for more of a preliminary design funding, so we can actually have this more shelled out, so we can actually break it out. Talk with Greg, there are some of these bridges, at least in the next 10 years, are coming due for either rehab or major replacement. So that can maybe, like Pete was saying, build this in as sort of a piecemeal approach with an overall plan. That we have developed in mind, we want to see this go.
My only thinking is that in the phased approach, when you're looking at traffic studies, that if phase one and phase two get done and three gets delayed, what does that ultimately do for future movement?
That's a good question we definitely have to consider, right, for that, yeah.
But it's also, I know we talked about it with Greg and DOT was, like Chris said, this is kind of in that, it's not in that, crazy imaginative cost phase of Reimagine 787 or the Livingston Avenue Bridge. So it's a Pell that could be implemented and we could get a lot of lessons learned and stuff like that from a state standpoint of, if something, God forbid, happens with either paperwork or process where this gets delayed or something gets impacted, you're only impacting exit 4C. You're not impacting all of 787. You're not impacting all of Manans Bridge. So there's some benefits of starting small as well, while still, because like he said, it's Pell's been done since 2006, but in the transportation world, 20 years is a pretty short time frame for learning and everything else. And so this would be kind of one of the first Pells, if not the first Pell, to move into a design construction phase that the state would be implementing or the state and county would be. So there's a lot of lessons learned that we could do through this study that then we could move forward to these other bigger Pells and know that we are more solid in what our expectations and scopes could be.
Any other questions for Chris?
You know what I'll say as a side, it just fascinates me, is because it's that. When you see the overall, I mentioned to Greg about what 890 looked like in 1968, and I'm sure they cut that ribbon and said, we did it, this is amazing. And they probably did the same thing when they did 787, and they probably did the same thing when they built the Capitol in Albany, and now we all sit here and we're like, how can we fix these issues? And we think that we're fixing them, and I hope that we are fixing them, but it's fascinating to think that in 40 or 50 years, there could be a group sitting around this table saying,
Cursing our names.
how could we undo what they did in 2025? I wish that we could do it. And it's a fascinating, it's interesting to sit around this table and think about things like that, of what we're doing here today and what could possibly be
We're
done.
saying what were they thinking, and in 50 years. someone-
That's what I mean. They could be like roundabouts. What are they thinking with the roundabouts? And it's interesting to think because it was the same people, it's just not us. It was the
Right.
same type of people doing the same time, just trying to make things better. And here we are trying to make things better again. So, well,
Employment projections were much more optimistic.
I know that. That one is a big one.
Yeah,
GE was at its heyday when that was built.
Right?
all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll, if it's okay with you guys folks, we'll post a copy of the presentation on the
Absolutely.
website so you can get a closer look at some of the concepts.
And by all means, post the link as well, so that everybody has a chance to review and comment on that website.
All right, thank you. Moving on to administration, previous meeting minutes of November 5th. I get a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes. Nice. Chris, do we have a second?
Thank.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. 2026 Planning Committee Officer Update. I guess that's you, Sandy?
Well, technically, it's a little bit of you.
A little bit
So
of
you
me.
wanna make your little announcement?
Well, I don't know if it's a secret, but I will be retiring sometime in the relative near future. I can't seem to get out from under some projects that keep cropping up, but so yeah, I will be moving on after what, 30 years at CD?
At least.
CRTC,
yeah. Long time you've been partnering here.
over 40 years in the system, so it's time, Old guys gotta move along. So I don't know, there will be, Chris is currently vice chair.
Correct.
I think that the history of that is vice chair potentially moves into chair, and we're looking for someone else
A
to
vice
be
chair.
vice chair.
I mean, if anyone is interested, I don't expect you to raise your hand in public, but if you're interested in serving an officer role, feel free to reach out to me offline. I will be contacting a few of you to see who'd be willing to serve in one or either role, but Chris is willing to serve as the chair. So normally we would have nominations and all that. At this meeting, we'll wait until February's meeting.
Yeah, I'm trying to, well,
Steve's
you know,
transitioning over.
trying to get things. Nothing seems to be going quick with some of these projects, but I'm sure it'll get there eventually.
Yes,
But
There's a feature in Outlook, it's called Mail Forward.
yeah,
Do not disturb.
that too.
so if that's.
Yeah, that's it. We'll,
Essentially looking for a
we're
vice.
likely looking for a vice chair unless someone really wants to compete with Chris for the chair role.
Oh,
All right,
All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, of course, Steve. Well,
not a
oh,
problem.
well, you're not going away quite yet.
Not
We
quite
Appreciate
yet.
all of your years of service.
So moving along, action items, we have the tip amendments, right? Frisbee Avenue, who is discussing Frisbee Avenue? So,
That, Bill, is that you, Bill?
Yeah. And Joe Semino is on as well from CHA.
Great.
We as we moved along in this little project of ours, we found we had to do some extra work. We had to do pretty much a complete realignment and both horizontally and vertically on one section of Frisbee. And that led to drainage and all the other good stuff that goes with redesigning a section, which has come into extra cost. So that's why we introduced this. We are pretty much ready to get, we submitted, BSNA, yes. Yeah,
Construction plans are.
construction plans are in and they're waiting for, this amendment to go through so we can move on to regional director and then get this out to, bid for, look at it. Construction will be starting this, construction season.
So the main cost changes were in the construction costs, right?
Yeah.
In the construction.
Construction costs and a little bit for the consultant for the records.
Yeah, I think this is Joe from CA. You know, as Bill mentioned, this is about a half-mile project, and it's really split into 2 quarter-mile pieces of Frisbee Avenue as you go from south to north. The second piece, we'll call it the northern piece. I think when this was first put on the tip in 2021, we've learned some things since then. And one of the key, I think, safety improvements is there's a lot of pedestrian activity on Frisbee Avenue. There's many parks, both baseball, soccer, private parks, people walking back and forth across this street, and the need for mid-block crossings became evident. And where it makes sense to have the mid-block crossing on the second section of this roadway, for a lot of reasons, when you stand there, the sight distance due to the crest curve and then that subsequent sag curve, it was tough to see. It's tough to see from across the street, and there is no signal there. So putting in RFBs will help, but also expanding or increasing that sight distance was really something that we felt really needed to be done to make this a really successful project. That led to the reconstruction part. It's not all of the project, but it's a piece of the project that made it increase in costs, as Bill says, with drainage and so on. And then, inflationary pressures from 2021 when this was first put onto the tip, even if it was put on back in the day by the city with inflation in mind in 21, I think that inflation numbers then were not as high as they are now. So the combination of those two, and I think the new PEM concrete that we're using on all the sidewalk, the initial use of PEM concrete has created some bids that are higher than what was estimated a couple of years ago. We think the PEM concrete, talking to contractors, is going to start to come down as they get more used to what's required and so on. But we're still in that kind of transition mode. So, just adding to what Bill said, those were all kind of built into what we found was an engineering estimate that is just a shade under $1 million less than what was on there from 2021. So we're asking really from about the 1.9 range to the 2.8 range. And this is a requirement that we just get this updated on the tip before DOT can ask for authorization to advertise. And we're ready to do that. All the I's are dotted, T's crossed. It's just getting this approved so that it could start construction as early as a couple months out. So That's all I got to add, Bill.
Do you need larger?
Yep.
Drawings?
Sandy, would it be possible, maybe if not, to put on our amendments going forward when they were awarded?
When they were first
So
added
this
to the
was-
tip,
This was a tip, did I hear tip 2021? Was it a pavement preservation? Like, what was the, I mean, just the, that's what I mean, I just.
yeah, because it's
What-
gone through a little iteration.
Well, everything goes through, but
Combined.
even if you're looking at the Troy one, it would just be, I think it would be just be helpful to know
And easily add that.
where it was.
What it was?
Yours is 22, yours was 21, and what it was.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly add the date it was added to the tip, at the original cost. I don't know if the cost would be of value.
I wouldn't even need to call, I just,
Just
this
when it
was
was added?
a 2021, was it a normal tip solicitation that was put and approved? But I just, you lose sight of that, and I know years ago it got a little cumbersome, but we used to have kind of a larger tracker to see where everything was, for
Right.
project delivery. But I looked at this and I'm like, Frisbee Avenue's not ringing a bell. And even if I were to bring one forward, I could put on there, as awarded as part of the Bridge New York program and this date, and you just put it on here, see, this was what it was, just to give it a little bit more definition.
And to answer your question,
Which is
Chris,
just a general. Yeah,
in this particular case, you're absolutely right. It was a regular tip solicitation. This was one that went back and forth. There was two city projects, City of Albany projects, Frisbee Avenue and Central Avenue. Central being a much larger project, much more involved project. There was history here where this was at one point being combined with the Central project, and then since then has been separated from the Central Avenue project because of the length of time the Central Avenue project has taken and will continue to take, given all of the complexities with that corridor downtown and this was one that we felt, the city felt too, that we can get something out the door and built. So this kind of got, from schedule standpoint, got dragged along a little bit with Central until the point we realized it's getting dragged along too much and now it's being separated back out. But yes, it was part of a regular tip solicitation, is my understanding. Back in the
you remember that.
our friend.
Is there more of a scope creep or is it just a?
It's just for informational purposes to see if it's a 2021 project, the warrant through, that's it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come through on this data, it's not on.
No, we have to revisit the whole project delivery bigger conversation anyway, but I mean, we can definitely, we'll talk and figure out what we can do to.
And this
respond to
goes to
that.
policy or not?
This one is planning committee only.
Less than what?
It's less than three.
Less than three.
Yep.
Three. All right, any further discussion? So we're looking for
I'll make a motion to
motion
approve.
to approve. Thank you. Do we have a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed, staying, motion carries. Moving on to our second tip amendments, Congress and Ferry Street, City of Troy. Is this Sandra?
Yes, you get your policy board out of this one.
Over 3 million.
It is over 3 million and tried to keep it as low as possible. It was a normal tip add-on, Chris. And over time, it became consolidated with two other projects. Commerce Ferry existed in and of itself as mill and fill. The traditional intersection on our side of the Congress Street Bridge then was incorporated with it in conjunction with Penrose Development demolishing and rebuilding the Taylor apartments in the city. That in and of itself was a bit of a delay because that area has a significant retaining wall at the apron of the bridge right now. We were looking at deconstructing that, rebuilding it. Over time, it was not deemed viable to do so because of the way the bridge is integrated into the landing area. And the cost would be restricted. So working with Penrose, they redesigned their anticipated constructions of Taylor Apartments 3 and 4 that are going to be along the river, on the north and south side of the Counter Street Bridge, where the traditional intersection, will be constructed. We also have Bridge New York funding integrated into this to deal with what's known as the Sage College Tunnel, which actually is bridge, over First and Second Street in Troy. The timing of that has to be coordinated with Sage's student population so that it's not going on at the time of classes. So that in conjunction with a bit of a delay on the internal city part, the public hearing that was held for this project was requested to be reheld in a more informative session, not a mandatory thing, but just something that the mayor's office wanted to do. So we have been hit with some time delays to get to a final design report submittal. As it is over time, inflationary costs, it's brought up the cost of concrete, the retaining wall issues that are going to have to be coordinated, as well as the two other projects, as mentioned, the Penrose construction and DOT's work on the Congress Street Bridge over the next couple of years, coordination, especially for laydown areas that are becoming very filled up fast as a result of 3 projects converging. We were pushing this project out a bit longer than what originally was anticipated. Those costs obviously inflated faster than anticipated. Perhaps by the time that we get to construction, the concrete costs might come down some, but that's a big element of the increase in costs that we're looking at the estimate now. That in conjunction with the required contingencies, risk factor 15%, inflates some more, and then the construction inspection recommended percentage 12%. Again, hits you again. So we were hoping that it was going to be around the 3 million. It was more closer to the 4 million. So the request for the 3.9 exists, hoping that the reality might come in less. But right now, because we're looking to go out to bid this year, the end of this year, maybe a little sooner, but with the majority of construction work occurring next year in 27, with the culmination of all construction completion being early 28, we have to basically cover the bases for the potential costs, and that's what we hope to do so in this amendment.
Question.
Greg, did you just want to speak quickly to the large urban, because both of these amendments drew down on that fund source, but we have enough and.
Yeah, happily. So, the last amendment was about 1 million of large urban. This is almost 4 million of large urban, but the tip fiscal constraint table shows that we under program large urban by about 10 million in the 5-year tip. And so drawing that surplus down is a good thing, because spending large urban has always been a challenge for New York State. So that if we can, utilize that fund source and get these delivered, it'll help the bigger picture as well as the regional picture of spending the funds we are allocated. So.
If it helps, we could increase.
I knew you're I'm waiting for one more to come in with some use of that money. So, but no, there's a balance there that we could use.
So the tunnel being reconstructed is the tunnel under Sage.
Yes,
That's the tunnel.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a ferry under tunnel, ferry.
And the city of Troy owns that tunnel.
Yes. It was originally Sage's responsibility for upkeep. That was contracted over to the city for maintenance, but there's still a relationship with the college relative to certain elements of the bridge itself.
And the bridge is owned by Troy or? There's BFP money
The bridge formula is for the tunnels,
because the tunnel's a bridge.
yeah.
Yeah, two bridges.
Okay. Okay, sorry.
Any further discussion, questions for Andrew? We have money, it's there. Greg happily discussed that. So, we're looking for a motion to approve, Troy's, tip amendment request. Can we get a second? Further discussion,
I'll say first. I think this was first. Or was it third time?
all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Troy gets, thank you, that's one. Third amendment is off the agenda, right? So we'll move right into discussion.
One more action item, which is the PIP
Oh, policy.
revisions.
Yes,
Yes.
tip amendment policy.
So, I'll have Andrew and Ethan jump in as well. We discussed at the prior planning committee, been a while, last year, and a long time ago in 2025. Some options for amending the tip for certain discretionary program awards and certain other grant award situations in a manner that didn't require policy board approval, or at least better address the timing issue when some of these awards happened versus our meeting schedules and what have you. So after discussing it with a bunch of folks, including members of our policy board through the administrative and finance subcommittee that we have, we came up with this proposal for your consideration, and we'll bring this to policy board if you concur. So the idea, and I'll just read it, if an amendment would add new federal funds from discretionary programs to a new or an existing project, and if the project application included an endorsement letter from us, then the awarded funds may be added to the tip with only planning committee approval. So the idea here from the policy board's perspective is that they didn't want to give up sort of that authority to have a say in what gets added to the tip, but if there's already been some vetting of the idea at this table, whether that be through our staff being aware of a program proposal with someone like going back to the 890 example, if a build application comes, there should be a support letter or an endorsement letter that comes with that. That makes it kind of on our radar screen, we'll put it that way. And by it being on our radar screen, they would more than likely be consistent with the long range plan, which is usually what the endorsement letter says. And therefore that would give the policy board members the comfort level, say, when these awards happen, we agree to add them with just the planning committee's approval. That doesn't change the fact that it could occur, something happens in the month of March, and it needs to happen right away, that we may still need to call a special meeting of this body, but it wouldn't require grabbing all of our policy board members. And as you can imagine, not that you guys aren't busy, but they're even harder to grab for a 5-minute, vote. So that's sort of the general outline of the proposal. The other thing I'll mention is that projects that were specifically identified in the MTP, which is the emotion plan, are also by default endorsed. So anything that was in that project list is automatically endorsed. And then we can always amend and review that project list over the next couple of years as things evolve and change. So that's the first part of the proposal. And then the other piece of that, when we were talking it through with staff here, is that there are situations where state funds or other fund sources that are not federal get involved. And could we just make it in addition through administrative modification? So if the state were to say, hey, we're going to assign another 40 million to the 787 design process, we can do that through an admin mod rather than coming to you guys, because that's state money. So those are our two proposals. Did I miss anything, guys? Pretty much covered it.
Well, you just might want to add that if you are pursuing any discretionary grants of any kind, FHWA or FTA, let us know early in the process so we can produce this endorsement letter for you so that you'll be able to use this new clause, this E clause in the future, so that your new project can be expedited, put on the tip more quickly, and you don't necessarily have to wait for the next policy board meeting. Or if you're pursuing a grant to add additional funding to an existing project, so I think that came up a couple of times last year. Where that happened, and we thought we would have to wait for the next policy board, which only meets every 3 months. But we wanted to, I think there were an instance of this happening toward the end of the fiscal year where we wanted to get the money added before the end of the fiscal year. So if you're pursuing a grant, either for a new board or to add funds to an existing project, loop us in as early as possible.
Yeah, and it will also increase our awareness, and I'll remind you, for those that weren't around, when we got the SS4A grant, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant a few years ago, we, as the MPO, didn't know there were 4 other communities that had applied. Until Federal Highway told us, you guys either combine them all or you don't get it. So this is another way and another tool to be more aware of what you folks at the local level are applying for, particularly when it involves the federal highway funds. So, many of the sponsors are already great at doing that. I know CDTA, you guys will routinely request support letters or endorsement letters from us, but this will be just an avenue to and we will make it known to, and remind folks over time, but hopefully this will, kind of solve a couple of things that, might make it easier for all of us.
That was gonna be my question. So with these grant programs, it's not typical that they're looking for an endorsement from the.
I can't tell you how many times that our staff has been surprised when we find out somebody applied for something because no one told us.
I remember this conversation, or it might have been because of the Safe Streets for All, but do you foresee, and we have TAP out right now, so I would assume that multiple sponsors would then want a letter of support. Are there any situations where they would not be granted the letter of support?
It would have to be something that is not consistent with the spirit of the emotion plan. There's something like the Sienna College Perimeter Road would have probably fit that category. If you remember that one, those have been around for a long time. There was some discretionary award, if I recall correctly, for a Sienna College Perimeter Road is essentially a private road. And that was the challenge, right? So that might be one extreme case, but I would say more likely than not, most of these types of things would be consistent with the long range plan. It'd have to be something really out there.
It just falls on discretion.
Right. If I were to see something that would be out of line with In Motion, I want to build a 4-lane highway in the middle of Saratoga County, I probably will be calling NISA to say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Because that's the kind of thing that, we would be concerned about and inconsistent with the long range plans.
So are we looking for a motion, this body
To recommend
And this-
policy board approval of
this
of these ideas.
amendment? Any further discussion?
I just one other little tweak to the table, so this infamous table we have, we just combined 2 categories into one because they were basically saying the same thing, just shortened it, just pointing that out for full disclosure.
So. Get a motion to recommend this tip amendment policy change to the policy 4.
You said.
Yes.
Ready?
Greg,
Sandy,
further discussion?
Yeah, slightly.
Yep.
Should that be an and or non-federal fund source? Or just an or?
I think or. I think or works. Thank you, Dan.
Alright, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Anyone opposed, abstained? Our motion carries
Great.
to the policy board.
Yes, thank you for that.
So now we're moving into discussion items. UPWP.
Yeah.
What's you?
So just a brief update on where we're at with the UPWP build and why I'm bringing this up now is more to get your feedback. Because we want to make sure that our work plan reflects the types of planning initiatives that would be helpful for our communities, right? So some of this I shared at the last policy meeting. We're building the whole work plan around our emotion plan goals, right, of safety, mobility, access, livability, and resilience. You know, certainly continuing support for the Reimagine 787 project, the 378 bridge and the 890 Pell study, and implementing these remain priorities. Implementing the Capital Region Vision Zero plan is going to be a priority. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing this for the folks listening virtually, so let me just do that real quick. Sorry about that. Will remain a very priority in terms of we want to identify the use of our tip safety funding set aside that we have for implementing some aspects of the Vision Zero plan. We're also considering maybe focusing on some low cost and quick build type projects, maybe investing some planning funds into doing additional safety investigations in the high demand, if you will, areas or the higher crash locations in the study. So those might be some things that we're going to focus on. Our largest investment for this year is going to be starting our transportation model update through the household travel survey, which is a partnership between us, the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council and NISDOT. To again begin that lengthy process of updating our regional travel demand model. We are going to be funding a capital region resilience improvement plan. Hoping we're going to prepare some kind of a active transportation or a regional complete streets plan. We're certainly committed to the superload study. We're going to probably bring some alternative funding ideas for a couple of these regional studies to the planning committee at our February meeting. Because we're hoping to use some tip money on a few of these projects. And then we have the solicitation we just completed for a linkage program and an ADA study, so I'll go over in just a minute. But some of the additional technical support that we're thinking about, you know, again, continuing the technical assistance program, which has been increasingly popular, particularly for sort of targeted traffic assessments. Maybe it's a signal timing issue, maybe it's some other specific intersection issue. There's a whole range of things we can do with technical assistance, obviously beyond that. In partnership with CDRPC, obviously. We're going to continue the data collection count program, maybe even expanding that to include some other ideas like parking studies, or maybe things like queuing studies, you know, maybe going beyond just counts to see where there might be some benefit to local government folks. And that program is essentially a free program for local government folks. But we want to make sure they're targeted enough that, you know, reasonable to approach. For the human services agency transportation providers, we are going to be planning a conference. We named it the Tools of the Trade for 2026. I think probably April, May, June timeframe for that. Continuing housing planning in partnership with CDRPC, we've come up with some potential new data resources we might be able to access that are fee-based, but, you know, certainly would provide some additional information about housing that might be of benefit to the region. So we're looking into that. Doing some research on curb and parking management best practices. Thinking about, since we have had to retire the Equity Advisory Committee, what will take its place. And I think, you know, one step we'll probably take this year is to research some practices out there of how we make sure that these communities these populations are integrated into the planning process. You know, the advisory committee model worked at a certain time, but it's really not working anymore. So what else can we do to ensure that we have good representation in the planning process? we're hoping to construct some kind of a performance monitoring or reporting dashboard, so folks can go in and look at how the region's performing based on all the performance measures we established in motion, which includes the federal ones. Perhaps getting back to some traffic signal timing assessments. I know we're playing with some data that we have access to through CDTA's signals. They have MyoVision as part of their signal program. So what can we do to, measure the effectiveness of things like transit signal priority, or maybe use some other data to do some timing assessments. But looking at this bigger signal timing intersection conversation, I know there's some tip money from NISDOT to look at intersections as well and signal timing. So that probably will be some kind of a collaborative effort. I know there's an initial proposal for an interim transit center to replace the Albany Intermodal Center, the Greyhound station. But what's the long-term plan? Maybe this is a temporary, this gets us through a short period of time, but what is the long-term plan? And should we be thinking about that? And what are the needs? How has that industry changed over time? So that's maybe another planning topic. We're hoping to invest more this year in transportation demand management programming to try to nudge people and encourage them, offer the incentives to try transit, to try other modes of transportation, to again have an impact on traffic and reducing vehicle miles traveled to some degree. And then we've heard from many communities about the need for additional guidance on regulating and planning for e-bikes and e-scooters. We just had a fatality in the city of Albany, which they defined as an e-bike. I would be curious to know, I'll talk to you offline, Bill, if that was the legal kind of e-bike or the illegal kind, but everything is being termed e-bikes, but there's this other category of vehicle, which is really and they should be referred to as e-motos. Those are not the same as an e-bike at all. So, I think there's some effort we can do to provide some materials to folks, particularly those who have off-road trails. And that seems to be the biggest conflict point right now, for how to regulate and plan for infrastructure and the different user groups.
I think you used the term micro mobility before,
Mhm.
because it's, in the cities at least, it's Dr. Seuss land right now. I mean, they're planes, trains, automobiles, people are riding on balls and skateboards and scooters, and I mean, if you can imagine it, they've made it and they put it on the road. So I get what you're saying between the motorcycle to the e-bike, but I've seen things I didn't know existed.
Yep.
They're flying around the cities.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, there's so many types of devices now, that, it's hard for communities to keep up. But I think we can offer some assistance in researching best practices. Our friends in New York City are, always ahead of the curve a little bit on researching this information. So I think we can learn a lot from their experiences down there, and in other places as well.
It's almost at a point where you're going to have a dividing line between fully self-propelled and non-fully self-propelled, because like you said, the iterations of anything assisted are becoming too broad. We're probably just gonna have to clump them till something else is determined.
I saw a skateboard go up a hill at 25 miles an hour. And I thought it was magic because it was the battery.
Little
would be
battery
in the
pack on
board.
pavement, yeah.
And I saw him come down the hill. I thought it was just normal until he went faster up the hill. And then I was like, oh, wait, now we're going a whole different direction. And once again, it's in traffic. It's because the city speed limit is now 25 miles an hour. So these vehicles can easily do 25 miles an hour. It's interesting.
Yep, it's a different time for sure for some of these devices. So those are some initial thoughts. In terms of the applications we got through the solicitation, I'm just trying to make it a little bigger. That's what I am struggling with here, but there we go. But we did receive 7 applications, 2 from the town of Glenville, 1 for Route 50, sidewalks and multimodal planning, so essentially complete streets, and another on Dutch Meadows Lane. Saratoga Springs was a complete streets and greenbelt, plan update. The Albany County submitted for, Port of Queens heavy truck traffic routing study. Stillwater submitted for a County Route 76 corridor study, which is essentially a complete street study, trying to get ahead of development in an area that's not already currently developed. So this is an opportunity area. Aiken Avenue in the city of Rensselaer, where there's some pedestrian safety issues, particularly related to crossing rail lines. And then we had one ADA proposal for a self-analysis and transition plan in the village of Scotia. So we're going to have a funding recommendation on these for you folks at the February meeting, and that kind of ties back to how we can leverage tip money to offset some of the costs of some of these larger regional planning studies, so that we can make sure we have enough resources to fund a couple of these at the very least for this year. But you know, that's a brief summary, but if there are things that you know, have been coming up in your community, your jurisdiction that we haven't been talking about, you know, one thing Greg mentioned to me, which I don't know if it's something this body wants to or can get involved with, is the bridge condition issue for the state. I know originally at some point you had a concept for a Hudson River Bridge study. I don't know if that's something we want to start thinking about. If you didn't hear, and Greg, I didn't call the resource of the data for what you shared, but we're ranked 50 out of 50 states in bridge condition.
Yes, depending on whether it's 48 or 50, depending on what metric, but yeah, or not great.
It's not a great place to be. So, you know, from a planning perspective, you know, I'm not sure what support we can offer, but I mean, that might be a infrastructure conversation that we should be having to see what we can do. I mean, we can try to refresh like the local bridge study, or maybe there's a complement to the local bridge study that can be done. The resilience planning effort will likely involve a lot of bridge infrastructure because of the flooding risk. So culverts as well, but you know, just brainstorming here. But again, if there's other topics that have been coming up in your community, this is the time to bring them to the table. Here, feel free to email me, give me a call offline if you would prefer. Because we're interested in hearing them, and if you know things like the e-bike story, or you know, we hear a lot from communities about truck routing. You know, there's only so much we can do with truck routing. But maybe there's some resources or guidance we could put together, particularly for your elected officials, your board members. You know, we're happy to consider all of those ideas, so.
Where we rank with regard to how much bridge square footage we have, I would think we're at the top.
Well, that's part of the conversation, is we have so many large bridges over water, you know, that it's as much as one statistic sounds, you know, alarming, it's they're also all maintained on some level, whether they're restored to good. It's just we at least keep them all fair as best we can.
Where's New York ranked as far as the number of bridges nationally?
I don't know on the state level. I just know that in Region 1, Region 1 actually owns an enamored amount of square feet. We're second only to New York City. You know.
Sam put that up years ago.
Yeah, so New York City is more square foot than Region 1, but Region 1 is number 2 in the state for regions. And it's actually by a lot. Yeah, once you get to the other upstate regions, the square footage that DOT owns is far lower.
Well, Region 1's a long region too.
Well, yeah, it's a large region and
Very hilly, a lot of rivers.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
and we're the first DOT region that owns the bridge instead of an authority. You know, from the dun south, every bridge is owned by an authority that collects revenue to keep it good. You know, it's an interesting conversation and story. You know, the Hudson River crossing study was a brainchild of ours to strategize or prioritize the river crossings. We've gone in and out of pushing that forward. The local bridge study, I don't think is old enough to redo. I would say that, yeah, we've done it twice now, and I don't think it's due for a refresh yet. But the state system, we have an asset management teams that is very aware of the state-owned bridges, so I'm not sure where to go for planning efforts on that.
Is it the state's bridges that this study was done on, or is it everyone's bridges in the state?
I would assume it's an overall all bridges condition, because that's what. Yeah, Federal Highway just cares about all bridges, they
Yeah.
don't look at ownership.
Yeah.
Um,
And do you know like what's the condition rating that they considered?
I don't, I know it's probably something along the lines of. The definition of structurally deficient by square foot is one of the major metrics we look at. You know. Yeah, so, yeah, I didn't get the data that, the background of this.
So it's a little sobering. I don't mean to bring the mood down, but but yeah, I mean, if there's other, transportation planning issues, developing or existing in your community that, or jurisdiction again, that, maybe we can offer some support to research, resolve, offer some guidance, feel free to put them on the table, because now is the time. Because we're working on the budget for next year right now. That's all I have to share on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. TIP admin modifications.
Yep, I'll let Andrew just sort of quickly share.
Nothing too exciting to report. These are all the administrative modification moves we completed since the last meeting. We're working under the new FY 26 to 2030 tip. So if you have a project that's on the new tip and you want to get it started, feel free and go ahead. The statewide tip is still a work in progress, still being developed, but if your project is, our local FY 26 to 30 tip was already approved, so go ahead and work on those projects. And if you need a tip action and you're not sure if it needs planning committee or policy board approval, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll determine that and let you know if we can handle it as an admin mod, which we can do very quickly, or if it needs higher level of approval, we'll let you know that as well.
How is the trend for pushing projects forward by a year or so?
Well, we pushed a lot of projects out to the out years when we did the tip update. So a lot, in the prior tip, there were a ton of projects in FY 25 and 26. So we did the exercise where we reached out to all the project sponsors. Many of those got moved out. That actually freed up a lot of programming capacity in FY 26. So we were actually a little under program, which is why we were able to do a couple of these amendments from earlier on the agenda. So I haven't been moving anything out since we did the tip update. But that brings up a good point, which is if you have a project that's in one of the later years, but it's ready to move now, let us know and we can admin mod it into the current fiscal year as funding permits.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. NISDOT project delivery update.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a handout of the multi-site paving work that or is it all the paving work that we have to do next?
Is that the same as that?
It is, yeah, this handout's what's on the screen. This is something we used to report annually and get back in the habit of illustrating where all that pavement set aside money goes. And then obviously putting in all the site specific locations as well, so we just wanted to share what's coming for the 2026 pavement program. Again, just being transparent on where that set aside goes along with the other stuff. And awareness of what's going to be under construction starting in 26 with the volume of work. A lot of this will carry over to 27. But yeah, just an annual awareness update. It's a good winter topic to.
So this Route 20 project, I sent you folks a note, I didn't hear back. It's
Yes.
currently on the 2025 tip as a different tip. So are we removing that from the current tip or the new tip, I'll call it?
We probably, Yeah, we'll have to figure out the action to take, whether it's
Okay.
an action now or next program update, we sort it out, because I know it's in the out years. Yeah, we can work through that.
So we did indicate on the handout, the couple of projects that are using federal funds, that's what is indicated by the tip ID number, just so you're aware. All the rest, presumably are using, state funds through the statewide paving contracts.
Well, or the federal set aside, it's the rural multi-county, it's a mix.
Or the rural multi-county.
Yeah, it's a mix of both. A lot of these are state funded, but some are still federal using the federal set aside.
And most of the larger dollar value ones are on our tip, so.
Yeah.
And most of them have, if not all of them, are addressed in prior tip amendments.
So,
Is that it, Greg?
yeah, FYI, yep, for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Status of regional transportation planning initiatives.
Yep, we're slowly but surely wrapping up a number of projects. I think by the policy board meeting in March, we'll be able to give the members a briefing on the recommendations from the Route 7 corridor study, which I know, as you all know, is a challenging corridor, has had some major issues, high profile crashes, so we're looking forward to seeing the recommendations from that one. Boston Spa and Saratoga Springs Saratoga Springs should be getting started in the not too distant future. We're at the point of picking consultants now. Boston Spa, the REI should be hitting the street sometime this month. And then we've got a couple of technical assistance projects we're wrapping up. We're waiting to hear back from the city of Cohoes on the parking study. We're finishing up, and well, not really finishing. I think we're midway maybe through the active transportation for Albany County. Or is that just starting?
We're still doing contract.
Oh, the contracting part, I'm sorry, yeah. And then we did finish the EV, curbside charging, setting analysis for the city of Albany, which we shared, at prior meetings. And we're currently working with the airport on a traffic assessment, North Greenbush, and, trying to work out a project with, City of Waterville. So those are the technical assistance projects we have going on. Most of our bigger regional projects are wrapping up now too. Just heard the presentation about the 890 PAL, the Vision Zero study is largely complete. 378 Bridge is largely complete. And then the ADA project in Albany County is in getting into draft form. So we are pretty close to being caught up with our workload here, so it'll give us some capacity to work on new things next year. So that's the update.
Thank you, Sandy. Regional and local planning updates. Back to you again, Sandy. Anything, explanation?
I don't think I have anything new to add, so we will have a heftier agenda at our next meeting, so just be prepared for that. But yeah, I think I will.
Thank you. CDRPC.
Upcoming grant opportunities from the Northern Border Regional Commission applies to Schenectady, Rensselaer, and Saratoga counties. Only 3 programs, first one being the Catalyst program. It funds wastewater systems, transportation infrastructure, workforce development and facilities, outdoor recreation infrastructure, and new childcare and healthcare facilities. Second one is the Forest Economy Program. Infrastructure projects, including transportation, water, wastewater, telecommunications, and energy. And finally, Timber for Transit focuses on forest products, for example, glued laminated timber, cross-laminated timber, composite materials, and transportation infrastructure. CDRPC is the designated point of contact for the federal program, and we are able to provide direct technical assistance and grant writing support for municipalities with a population under 5,000. But have them reach out to us with any questions. That's it.
Mark, CDTA.
Hey, folks. Sorry about that.
Mike.
So, happy New Year, everyone. So late November, we rolled out our latest service changes, including the introduction of the new Flex service in Saratoga Springs. Based on our observations of the first month of operation of the new Flex Zone, this is looking like a big success with consistently low wait times, ridership comparable to how many people we were moving with fixed routes before, but at a lower operational cost. So we're very happy about that. We also opened 2 new BRT stations on the Purple Line in Albany at Colonial Avenue and Harriman East, which improves access for the Melrose and Buckingham Lake neighborhoods, as well as the state office campus. For the year ahead, our priorities are advancing the Red Line BRT upgrade along Route 5, along with advancing mid-sized infrastructure projects along our routes and pursuing new mobility hubs at key locations. And lastly, we're also continuing our work to implement the transit development plan, which we recently approved this fall, which is mainly going to be in the form of service and schedule adjustments throughout the year. And that's it for us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mike. Back to NISDOT. All right.
Yeah, a couple things. The roadway departure safety action plan was announced for the local applications that came through. You know, I know we didn't subscribe to the entire available pot, but nearly everything in Region 1 was awarded. There was a couple of things identified as ineligible, but they're like pennies on the dollar of the overall. So basically everyone got everything they asked for in the in that announcement. And to make it efficient, like all these awards, where they're multi-sponsor, DOT is going to take the lead on the initial tip letter to get to on the February planning committee. So we'll do a tip letter and we'll circulate it among the sponsors that won an award.
East Greenbush and Town of Boston.
Yep. Yeah, I thought it was only 2 years, so go program. It's a roadway departure safety action plan, and it had a very specific set of criteria along with pre-populated maps to show you where the issues are and what's eligible. It had some complexities to it, and I think, you know, with everyone's bandwidth, we didn't get as many applications as we thought we would. But we're also gonna huddle internally and try and figure out a perhaps more efficient way to distribute these funds for another round in the future. Not exactly sure what form that'll be, but at least the first round is finally out and ready to go.
Can you recall two, I know we went over it at our meetings, but what the 2 awards were for? One, was it about guide rail? One,
Yeah, they're all
and
multi-scope.
striping. Oh, okay.
They have various elements, but they include guide rail, possibly like Chevron sign upgrades and, you know, the whole list of criteria. To make a viable project, everyone had to put multiple pieces in.
Yeah,
Cause
it doesn't add up that quick unless you're putting a ton of guide rail.
dozens of sites, yeah, so. So that was finally announced, which is nice. Friendly reminder, TAP pre-approvals due next week on the 15th. It's a requirement if you're applying for TAP to send in an application for pre-review. I know it fell with the holidays and everything that makes it a tricky part of the year, but the other topic there is if you miss the mandatory webinars, you can request to view them, and that counts, I guess, as long as you get access to the pre-recorded training, then that meets the requirements to attend the training. And the address is on the website, the right to request to view the video and get you added to the eligible sponsor list. And then in other DOT news, Don Mattamore's retired as of basically just before Christmas. He was the statewide liaison for all of the planning and program managers across the state. So my 10 counterparts and I, he's our main office coordinator. He's retired, so we'll see what happens there. And that's it from DOT this month.
Thank you, Greg. Thruway Authority.
I don't have anything for you.
Albany County Airport.
Morning. Not much on our end either. We're in kind of the calm after the storm. Now the holidays are over. So if you're feeling like getting on a plane going, now's a good time. I would say for us this year, we're kind of looking at projects away from the terminal. Hopefully to kind of keep the passenger experience less annoying as it's been the past couple of years. And I will say that if you fly out of the United, the A concourse, that project is, I got permission to say confidently it'll finish 3 or 4 months ahead of schedule. So in February and March, that should be a completely done section of the terminal. It looks incredible. As for the other parts of the terminal, we're getting there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Albany Port District.
John, are you still?
Morning, everyone. Yep,
There
still
you
here. How you doing? Happy New Year. Nothing to report from us.
Local government, other.
Just a reminder, registration is open for the Saratoga County Planning and Zoning Conference at the Saratoga Springs City Center on February 11th. So free to register. We'll see you then.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, just take note of the upcoming meetings, events. Our next meeting is February 4th.
February 4th, yep, not too far off, believe it or not.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, Mark. Second.
Yeah.
On favor, aye.
Aye.
Thanks for
That is,
chasing time.
Thanks,
not really
everybody.
time, yeah, it's been